the name Corpse Paint came about.
For me, it's just like an electric jolt.
The real ugly side of humanity, and their music sounds like it.
I always wanted to be a band that was approachable to people, that was just regular ass people. Yo, what's up? So before I start this episode, I want to bring up two really good friends of mine that I've met along the way. They've been the backbone and really the biggest supporters of this podcast since day one. Everything visually you see with this podcast has been done by Wither Designs and Benny Bones Art, and it could be your band next. Check them out on social media, get yourself something unique and original, and yeah, let's do this. Let's start it off with this tour, man. Holy hell, what a package. Like, I've never seen such a stacked lineup for a metal tour ever.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it.
So my thing off of that is Cannibal Corpse, Shadow of Intent, Whitechapel, and Revocation. What are you looking forward the most when venturing off with this? Obviously, there's been a big break in your career as a musician with COVID and stuff, but I mean, what's really the thing that you're I can't wait for?
I mean, just playing shows. We've been sidelined for so long in the pandemic. I really miss playing live, having that connection with the crowd.
Right. Now, is there anything on specific on the road that maybe other than playing music that you enjoy, like maybe hanging out with the bands, etc.?
Yeah, it's always great to hang out with the bands. I'm not sure how that's going to work with in a still sort of pandemic world. I'm not sure if people are going to be kind of keeping to themselves a little bit more,
right.
with protocols or whatever. So I'm not sure if it's going to be like a raging party every night, but I definitely enjoy hanging with the Cannibal guys. We've toured with them multiple times. They're always awesome. And same goes for the Whitechapel dudes. We've never toured with Shadow of Intent, but I'm sure they're cool dudes, and I'm sure we'll hopefully get to know them on this upcoming run.
So Shadow of Intent, do you dig their music? What's your favorite song from them?
I'm not really too familiar with them, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're when I saw the package, I'm that's kind of interesting because you got the kind of melodic deathcore bands, and then you got fucking Cannibal Corpse, and then you got melodic death metal. So I always like the variety. How about you? When you go to a tour show, what are you going there for? Do you want variety, or do you want all specifically one thing?
I think variety is good. I guess it just all depends on the lineup. If it's a lineup where all the bands kind of fit into a specific subgenre, that's cool because it feels very cohesive as far as a bill. But on the flip side, it's also cool when you go see a show and there's a bunch of different styles of band on there. I think back to Summer Slaughter.
Man,
those
wow,
bills
okay.
had so much diversity on them. So that was cool when we got to do those tours, and I'm sure from a fan's perspective it was probably cool to see a bunch of different bands across. It's all metal, but there's so much variety there.
Right. You don't know what to expect,
Yeah.
And
it kind of breaks it up too, especially when there's 10 bands, right? It's cool, and there's kind of some variety on there.
So let's talk about Cannibal Corpse. You've toured with them before, and think it back to your earlier days in getting into the style of music. What was the first proper introduction to Cannibal Corpse for you?
I think it was probably when I was just going to my local record store and just browsing the metal aisle, looking at all the different CDs and stuff. And I remember seeing Cannibal Corpse, Butchered at Birth.
Oh man.
And I was just wow, this is very intense. I was the kid at the video store that used to just rent horror movies when I was a super young kid, just based off of the VHS covers and stuff, so I think you kind of with metal, it's similar to horror, where you kind of experience the visual first of whatever the cover is, and at least that was that way for me back in the day. So yeah, I remember seeing that album cover and being like, holy shit, this is the most brutal thing I've ever fucking seen. And then of course, diving into their music, and really falling in love with with not just how brutal it was, but there's a lot of musicality that Cannibal Corpse has. I think they're um like, to me it sounds kind of funny to say, but like, I don't know, to me they're like a progressive death metal band in a way. Like the riffs aren't just
Death metal, like
yeah, like
grinding death metal.
yeah, I mean they're brutal as all hell, but like there's lots of interesting things that they're doing, like within the limitations of brutal death metal. Like
Right.
like Alex Webster is like an incredible
I
technical bass
I was gonna say
player.
that right away. Like
Yeah,
Alex Webster, you watch him, and I get the progressive feel because he's just doing so much. Like a lot of
yeah,
bass players just like flow under the radar, but Alex is like in your face all the time, 100%.
yeah, and just and weird changes, weird scales. From a musical standpoint, I've always found Cannibal Corpse to be very surprising. Like you don't know what you're gonna expect with the Cannibal Corpse, but it's gonna be brutal. But I guess to me, they're progressive in that true sense of the word, where they're always kind of pushing the envelope, right? They're never gonna sort of write the same song twice. It's always gonna be brutal. It's always gonna be heavy. It's always gonna be punishing. Um, and it's gonna be in that realm of death metal, right? You're not gonna hear George singing a power chorus or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I just always found them musically to be very fascinating. And that to me is like what drew me to death metal, in general, and to some of my favorite bands. Like they're within they're writing in the confines of a very brutal, heavy genre, but there's a musicality there that I guess like catches my ear.
Right. And the one thing I've noticed with that band recently is with Eric on board with that band, I think they're going to get leveled up like big time because Eric is such a phenomenal like producer, instrumentalist, like all around, man. I heard like his solos on the record and I'm like, God damn, Cannibal Corpse is going to be like I don't know how to put it, but amazing for the next one because he's more involved.
It's funny. I was talking with some friends when that last Cannibal Corpse record came out, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm gonna say it here. I think Eric Rutan is one of the most important people in death metal.
Yeah,
and I can
without a doubt.
quantify that. I mean, first of all, Ripping Corpse back in the day, right? Super influential band. Hate Eternal really pushed the envelope for extreme death metal. I mean, extreme speed. Again, almost progressive in how extreme it was. He's a producer. He has a recording studio, so he's worked with countless bands on the other side of behind the curtain, so to speak, right? And then think about, he was in Morbid Angel, one of the most iconic death metal
my
bands
favorite
of all time. Yeah, and the songs that he wrote on Gateways were incredible. It wasn't like there was Trey's songs and then there was Eric's songs. I mean, he really tapped into that Morbid Angel vibe and wrote some amazing Morbid Angel songs, which is no easy feat because Trey has such like a unique style. And then he joined arguably the other biggest death metal band of all time, which is Cannibal Corpse, and he fit like a glove there.
With all,
so,
it's insane. Like that guy, and the thing is, like, the one thing about him I've noticed is like, how when you go into a record, the producer kind of gives you the idea of like, hey man, this should be in the record, and it totally changes the outcome. He's like the unwritten person in those influential albums, like the guy that's like behind it, but not taking all the credit,
Yeah. So anyway, there's my hot take. I'm saying it here first. Eric Rutan's one of the most important people, the most important man in death metal. We'll put it.
Okay. Who else do you think is who do you think is like number one, the most influential person in death metal?
Uh,
Maybe the one that like started it all.
well, I mean, I think you got to go Chuck from Death.
Okay, yeah, hell yeah,
You know, as far as I mean, if you look at his output, Death is one of those bands where, yeah, I would argue they're the most important, influential death metal band. And if you look at like their whole catalog, it's like they kind of captured the zeitgeist of the death metal scene with every
yeah,
single record that they put out. I mean, they started as an old school, death metal band, with that sound that's very popular now. It's funny, it's kind of like the pendulum has swung the other way, and now all of a sudden that kind of like,
yeah.
you
It's
know
going
you know
backwards.
yeah, exactly, that OSDM sound is like very, very popular, and like, their records are still at the top of the heap for me, of those early albums, Leprosy and Scream Bloody Gore. And then, they got, a little bit more refined. I think you can argue that certainly, individual thought patterns and symbolic are sort of progressive death metal
Yeah,
albums.
yep.
But it never gets too nerdy. It's very musical, still, and but very headbangable at the same time. And then Sound of Perseverance, like, there's all these different influences on there. I think that was probably their most progressive record.
Yeah.
But you could really hear how they were just sort of pushing the genre in a lot of different um, directions. So yeah, I'll have to, pay homage
I
to Chuck.
I would definitely agree with you there, man. Like I got into death metal and this type of music because of Scream Bloody Gore, man. I looked at that cover and I'm like, holy shit, like what is going on with this thing?
Hmm.
You know? And ever since then I'm like, I'm going for it. Which is kind of funny because I was young at the time, so I could have picked like, I don't know, like Cannibal Corpse, but I went with Death, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um so the next thing I wanted to cover is, like with doing countless amounts of tours, what do you think is the most rewarding part of traveling the United States?
Um, well, I mean, playing the shows is definitely the most rewarding part for me. I mean, there's no substitute for getting on stage, feeling that energy of the crowd, um, performing music that you love to play, and, hopefully, making someone's Tuesday night something special. I mean, obviously, it's great to have those Friday, Saturday night shows, but, it's extra
If you
special
can
on
make it,
those,
yeah,
on
because
those
they go out of
weeknights.
their way. they
Right, exactly. Yeah, people got
you
work the next day and all that kind of shit. So it's special when you're playing like on a Wednesday night, and, wherever, and, it's a packed house and everyone's just like losing their mind and everyone's just kind of throwing caution to the wind.
I feel like those Monday and Tuesday nights are really the given if your band is like, you know, something. Because all of my friends don't go out on Mondays and Tuesdays. I'm like the only guy. But
Right.
but a tour like fucking what you got coming, they're gonna come out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know? It's
Fucking better.
yeah. They better. Um so is there any specific cities that you admire a bit more than others? And maybe this could go off of the tour that's coming up.
Um, I mean, it's always great playing my home state, Massachusetts. So I mean, I love to play Boston. Worcester's cool too. Always good shows out there. New York, obviously, it's great. Great scene there. There's just so many people in New York, so I feel like it's always a good crowd no matter what. Um, LA goes hard. Um, you know, we've had great shows in Portland. We've had great shows in Texas. Austin, Texas is always great. But honestly, we've been having some really good shows in Houston and Dallas. I mean, we've
Yeah.
Chicago. I feel like I'm naming off like every single state right now. Minneapolis can be really cool. We've got like a lot of friends out there. Yeah, it's of course, like, New York and LA are going to be the biggest ones, but sometimes Atlanta,
Okay.
special shout out to Atlanta. I always love how diverse the crowd is there. It's just a diverse city, so it's cool looking out, into the crowd and just seeing like all these different metalheads from different walks of life. So yeah, the metal scene is strong in a lot of different cities. It really is impossible to choose a favorite.
So these interviews, man, I swear to God, like Texas always gets brought up, and I I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why is that? Why is that? And like most of the Texas bands I've talked to, like in person, they
Hmm.
always say that um because of their location, like if a show comes, they're all gonna show up. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
it's their location is like they're 5 hours away from each um like show, right?
Right.
So if they're all gonna pick one, they're gonna go to that specific show. Um, but I don't know. Texas is awesome. And my next one is, like Revocation has been active. It says 2000 to 2006 as Cryptic Warning, and then 2006 to present with the name that you have now.
Hmm.
Um, what has your band like not achieved yet that you're pushing for like every night or playing shows or on tour or just writing music in general?
Um, y- I think we're still moving up the metal ladder, so to speak. I mean, even bands that are super successful are still out there. Look at Cannibal Corpse. They've been doing it for decades now, right? There's obviously just that drive, to write music, to be creative, um, and there's something very addictive about playing live music. Um,
Mm, without a doubt,
so
yeah.
so yeah, I think it's kind of all of the above, that just kind of keeps that drive going. I mean, you could be in your, I look at the jazz scene, and I see musicians. I saw Wayne Shorter play on his 80th birthday. There's just whether it's hard rock, heavy metal, jazz, classical. There's just something so rewarding about playing music for other human beings, that it just kind of keeps you going.
So, with a consistent flow of records since like its birth, it was like 2 years and then for a couple years and then 1 year in between, you know, what do you think is like the driving force that keeps this machine like alive? Like a lot of bands, you'll see a big break of like 5 years, 2 years, um, 7 years, you know, what do you think?
Um, I think we just have a lot of material. I tend to write a lot. I've been slowing down my writing in the later years because I've been sort of focused on other elements of music. Um, but yeah, for me, it's like I can start to feel the material kind of like bubbling up like under the surface, like waiting for it to come out. So when it comes time, I just kind of go into writing mode, and it just starts sort of flowing out of me. And at that point, like I don't want to write a full record and just like sit around on it. Uh,
Yeah.
I wanted to, uh, you know, but we want to write it, we want to record it, and we want to put it out and start performing the new material.
So, would you say that your band does like a collaborative effort, or do you, hash stuff at home? Or like for me, like I just have a giant riff folder where I just record random riffs, and hopefully one day it'll be on a record.
Hmm. Yeah, I got multiple riff folders as well, so that's more how I write. I mean, we're all scattered, um, so we can't like get in the room together and really jam. Our drummer lives in Vancouver, um, and our bass player lives in Richmond, Virginia. So um, we don't have the luxury of like getting together every week to play or anything like that. But uh, I will say like just using technology, like getting on like Skype or Zoom and going over parts. I mean, that's how we wrote the last record. So usually what happens is I'll write all the music, and then I'll start kind of bringing it to the other guys and going over it. Um, and then we record the drums first, So I start getting Ash working on the material, few months before we got to go in so we can be familiar with it. But I mean, during the pandemic, it was all over Zoom or Skype rather.
Now, my question to you is like, so there's a lot of bands that I know that do the whole weekly thing and try to write songs together, and it never really works out. And I'm just kind of curious if you think that um, you're a little bit more productive the way that you do it, because I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I'm like, if I'm gonna write something, I'm just gonna hash it out on my own, and then eventually I'll get a band together.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the whole getting a band together and jamming just never works out. I mean, some bands it might, but a good majority probably not, because you got 5 different people saying what's going to work, what's not going to work.
Yeah, I guess it just depends. I mean, some bands, write that way where someone comes up with a riff and like every single member picks it apart. Luckily with the revocation in this incarnation right now, it's pretty smooth sailing when it comes to the writing process. So like I can just kind of do my thing, and yeah, because I'm gonna be my own worst critic anyway. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's not like I'm just the first thing that comes to mind is gonna be the riff of the song, and I'm just like, yeah, it's good enough. Like I mean, I lose sleep over riffs sometimes, right? I'm just I'm
Yeah.
constantly refining things in my head, writing things, moving parts around in my mind. Like I almost would rather not bother the dudes with the minutia of all of that, because like I kind of like know that it's going to change a bunch
Oh
of
yeah.
times anyway. So yeah, I'd kind of rather like work that stuff out on my own, and then once it feels good to me, then bring it in, and also like kind of open it up too. Like if the guys have any suggestions or input, like I definitely want to hear them out. But yeah, we're not one of those bands where the bass player comes in with a riff and then we all pick it apart and add our own little bells and whistles to it just so that we can feel uh productive. Because sometimes for the sake of like someone else kind of throwing their hat in the ring to have a suggestion, just to have a suggestion, maybe the riff didn't need anything, and now we've you've made it worse because egos get in the way and it's like too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever, and someone wants to say that they had a input on, and sometimes it's like, I'm sure with some bands I haven't really had that problem, but I'm sure with some bands it's like someone changes something with your riff and then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to change something with your riff, you know what I mean? It just becomes this kind of like pissing contest.
Yeah.
But for other bands it really really works. So I guess it just all depends. It really depends on the band dynamic. It depends on the individual members of the band. I don't think there's a one size fits all to the writing process, nor should there be, right? I mean, it's writing
Right.
music, and that's the beautiful part about making music and creating art in general, is there isn't one way to do it. And you look at 50 different bands, and they're probably going to have 50 different approaches
What
to their
ways of doing it?
writing
Yeah.
style. Yeah, so I think that to me I find is the fascinating part. You're going to have the bands that are more kind of driven by like a main sort of lead member that kind of does the lion's share of the writing, and then you're going to have a band where it's like everything is like completely even, and both are going to have great results depending on the caliber of the musicians in the band.
So let's think about writing in general. I mean, like, so when you say that you'll write a song, and in general, do you feel like so say you write one riff, do you think that you could write a full song off of that, or you just kind of keep it stored and then eventually, you'll put things together?
um it depends. Sometimes one riff can lead to another riff, can lead to another riff, and before you know it, you got 3 or 4 riffs, which is the basis of a song.
Yeah.
Other times, it's like I just kind of go into the riff pile and see what I can find. Like I've definitely gotten better at cataloging my ideas over the
Yeah.
years, so I don't just put everything in one file anymore. I mark everything by tempo.
Oh, okay.
Not that our songs don't have tempo changes in them, but I find that it'll be maybe a little bit easier to kind of like uh, revisit my previous thoughts if it's broken down by tempo. So I'll have like riffs 200 folder, and then riffs 150 folder, or whatever, or within a range. um and then like, okay, cool, like these three riffs from this 150 folder fit together, and the vibe of this riff from the 200 folder also fits. So like, okay, I'm gonna do like a tempo change somewhere in the song. And that way it just kind of allows me to keep track. What I used to do is just like have like one massive riff folder, and I would
Yeah,
just be
yeah.
so bogged down. Or
Right.
I would name just individual riffs, and then like 6 months later I'd be like, what the fuck does heavy riff mean? Like
They're
they're
all
they're
heavy.
all heavy. Yeah, so like uh yeah, doing it that way has been a lot. It's been able, it's been easier for me to be able to like organize my thoughts better.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool that like I mean, like I'm kind of the point where I'm doing it where the beginning of just having a huge gigantic folder, but doing a tempo thing might be a smart idea because I mean, there are so many guitar players that have so many like riffs hidden, but they just never come out, man. It's crazy.
Mm.
Um so Gargoyle, progressive metal, that's what I would call it. Um you know, What was your ultimate decision that made you go that way? I mean, to me, obviously it's going to be different in the Revocation, and I'm just kind of curious on how you came to that decision, and maybe like how has this leveled up your riffs in Revocation?
Yeah, I just wanted something. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to have a band that was primarily melodic vocals. I listen to a lot of rock. I'm a huge fan of bands like Alice in Chains. So I wanted to kind of scratch that kind of grunge itch a little bit, but do it in my own way, and definitely have some prog rock elements in there. So yeah, it was just a fun kind of palate cleanser for me to just write with a totally different group of guys, in a genre that's like metal adjacent, but certainly isn't like extreme death or thrash metal or anything like that. So it was a very it was something that I needed to do, um, for myself, I think, to work in a new kind of genre, and really kind of explore like the different things I can do in that like weird prog rock, prog metal kind of realm. And I think I'm not sure how it necessarily influenced Revocation. I mean, I think just maybe generally speaking, the more you the more you write, right, the more songs you write, the better you're going to get as a songwriter overall.
Hmm.
So perhaps it helped me as a songwriter, just kind of hone my craft just a little bit more there. Um, but yeah, it was just it was nice to do something totally different that I think still sort of showcases my my voice on the instrument, but maybe like in a different way.
So off of that, like you chose Season of Mist, and I'm curious what led you down that path. I mean, Season of Mist has some great freaking bands going on right now, and yeah, I'm just curious as to maybe some bands that you listen to on that record label, and how you got in.
Sure, yeah. Um, I had well, I've known Gordon, who's worked at that label for years. He used to work at Relapse back when Revocation was on Relapse, and we stayed in touch and we've stayed friends ever since. And but really, kind of what it was I was at Hellfest, and I think me and Michael were like double fisting beers, like watching Slayer. Michael's the owner of Season to Miss, and we just kind of started talking. And I was like, hey, I got this new band. I think it might be a good fit for the label because Season to Mist, they're known for as being like an extreme metal label, but they're also sort of avant garde.
Right.
They're
Totally
not just
agree.
yeah. Your run of the mill metal label. So I thought it would be a good fit because they have so many kind of weirder bands on there. And yeah, he really liked the sound of the band in terms of what I was kind of describing. He seemed like really intrigued by the material. So when I got home from France, I sent him some demos over, and yeah, we pretty much had a record deal. Like I don't know, a few weeks later to a month later, with when all was said and done. He basically heard the demos and was like, "Yep, I'm going to sign you guys." So that was cool. Of course, a little bit of back and forth in terms of like the business side of things. So I don't remember exactly when we got the offer. But yeah, we put the record out. It was the pandemic, unfortunately, like right at the kind of height of it all. So we didn't get a chance to tour to support the record. But I'm really proud of what we accomplished with me and my fellow bandmates with that one. And yeah, I think Season to Miss was a cool home to be on to put out this kind of weird prog rock music that we put out there.
I think the best thing about Season of Mist, like you said, is like I think that they take on like the weird like you're a metal guy, obviously, but you want to go a different route. Like most metal labels will stick to that same formula, whereas they'll take on like some of the bands that really deserve it. Like me, I would probably not go down the progressive rabbit hole that you would play, but with that being in front of my face with that label, like I would listen to it, because I respect them. They have a good ear. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, they took a chance on us. Yeah, because it wasn't like, okay, here's this other thing that like is like sounds just like Revocation, so it's going to appeal to the exact same fan base. So it's like maybe more of like a no brainer, right? I think people kind of expected it to sound a certain type of way, and it definitely wasn't that. So it was
Right.
cool that they took a chance on it. And yeah, we're working on some new material for that right now. We're hoping to do some shows. The things are kind of probably after the Cannibal tour. Things are kind of seemingly getting back to normal a little bit, although obviously fucking Omicron threw a wrench in the works there. But hopefully we'll be able to do some live shows with Gargoyl and play some of this material because yeah, we haven't gotten to play any of these fucking songs live since the record came out. So we're definitely chomping at the bit to get out there and perform some of this stuff live.
So one of the coolest things about the label, right? We're talking about Gargoyl, and they got Archspire. Like, think about scrolling and you see a tech band, and then you hear this progressive band. Like to me, that's amazing because, like I said, the blend of what that label does is just insane. Like they got Derweg Einer. I can't even say the last thing Fry hit, but that band is black metal. They're black. They're like a black metal band.
Yeah,
they're all over the place. So shout out to them. They've been killing it.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you would want to promote for this episode? I was going to wrap it up right here.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I got my website, davedavidsonguitar.com. If people want to check out other things there. I got that's like the way people can reach out for lessons or whatever. But yeah, other than that, we're just really looking forward to getting out on tour and playing some shows finally.
Hell yeah. So off of the lessons, man, do you so say somebody wanted to learn how to write a song or just learn how to play guitar, what would you pick? What are you more avid to do?
Like
what's your favorite type of lesson?
it I guess it sort of depends. If I kind of enjoy teaching I kind of enjoy teaching it all. It's cool when you get like a student that, you know, has a certain level of technique, obviously. But it's cool to start, from scratch with a lot of players. I mean, a lot of guys come to me and like, they maybe they have some general understanding, but they've got like a lot of gaps that need to be filled in. So, it's cool to kind of lay that foundation, and go over like just like kind of basics of like theory and stuff like that, and get them up to speed with that so that they can go and succeed in whatever they're trying to do. Obviously, songwriting classes are fun. I can kind of talk about my process. I've had students bring in riffs or solos that they're working on, and we can kind of talk about uh, how they could maybe you know edit them or make them a little bit better. So that's kind of fun because there's more of a creative element. A lot of my students I work on jazz solos with, which is a lot of fun
Nice.
for me.
Right.
So like we kind of transcribe stuff together, and then we kind of see some of like the ways that you can kind of think about music from different genres and then applying it to metal or rock, just to get some new flavor into your playing. So yeah, it as long as people are doing the work and come in with a good attitude, it's fun to teach all walks of students from all walks of life and all different skill levels.